So in this section, we also be learning something called identities. So the meaning of identities means the expression on the left is equal to the expression on the right. So which means, right, whichever values of x that you sub, if you sub it on the left, you will sub it on the right, they will get the same value. The value on the left side, the value on the right side will be the same. So that's why we will have this method called substitution, which is supposedly quite an easy method. But a lot of students will be having a question mark. So what values of x do I sub? So in the method of substitution, essentially we can sub any values. So, but we are going to sub values that eliminate certain things. So for example, in this question, so where is your left-hand side? So your left-hand side is a cubic equation. Your right-hand side is also a chain of, it's a huge expression that has a lot of brackets. So the green portion is equivalent to the yellow portion in terms of value. So we are going to sub some selected values. So the selected values, right, will be the values that make the bracket 0. So you look at the question, which are the brackets? So you got a x minus 1, you got x minus 2, you got x plus 2, and you also got a x squared. So here, I will think of x equal to 1, because 1 minus 1 will give a 0. Here, I will think of x equal to 2. So the values that I will choose to sub, right, can start off with making the bracket 0. So I'm going to put a minus 2 plus 2, the bracket will be 0. X equal to 0, 0 square will be a 0. So I'm going to zero out the bracket. So in this question, I can choose to sub x equal to 1. So you sub it on the left, and you sub it on the right. As you sub it on the right, you should observe that you got a lot of zeros. So this is a 0. So 0 means it will disappear this whole thing. Anything multiplied by 0 will be 0. So this is a 0 here. So this whole thing will actually disappear. So actually this whole thing simply disappear. So what are you actually left with? You are left with 18 equal to 3c. So I found the value of c. So now that I sub one value and I already got one unknown, okay, I can sub another value. Okay, so this time around, maybe I will sub a 0. Substituting a 0 on the left side is quite nice because everything kind of zero out. Okay, and then this part also becomes a 0. Okay, what happened to the c here? So you should have used the c that you have found. So this part becomes a 0. This part becomes a minus 4b. And this will be a 6 and a 2. So everything is pretty easy. So you got a 4b, and you got a 12 minus 16. So your b will become a minus 1. So does it mean that every time you sub a value, you will get the equation? Sometimes you may not. sometimes when you sub a value, you will get a simultaneous equation. So that's quite possible. So you have found your C, you have found your B. So what should I be using? Okay, it's up to you. Okay, maybe I'm going to be using x equal to 2. So on the left side, okay, sub the 2. On the right side, you also sub the 2. So if you imagine you sub a 2 here, this thing will actually disappear because one of the brackets becomes a 0. So if you want to, you can just ignore it already and use back the C that you have gotten. So there's quite a high chance of making careless mistake. So from here, you find your A. So that is the substitution method. So when you see a lot of brackets, you can do the substitution method. So you are advised to do this method when you see a lot of brackets. That means there's a lot of values that you can make the bracket 0. Okay, but let's say sometimes you might not be able to do substitution, or no matter how you substitute, you just don't seem to be able to get the answer. So there's also another method like compare coefficient. So for example, in a simple one like this, okay, this is my left side, this is my right side. You can go for the substitution or you can go for the expansion. That means you expand out the bracket. Expand out the bracket, group the x together, and you group the constant together. So as you group the x together, as you group the constant together, you will be comparing. So what will you be comparing? So when we say we compare the coefficient, right? So this is the coefficient of x. So this is the coefficient of x. So if I compare the coefficient of x, I will get a plus b equal to 1. That looks like your sec2 simultaneous equation. And if I compare the constant, so if I compare the constant, okay, I will get another equation, which of course I can reduce. And it becomes my second equation. So from here, you just do something like sec2 simultaneous equation, and you'll be able to find the unknown. So generally in identities, there are two methods. Either you do the substitution method or you do the comparing coefficient method. Or sometimes there will be a mix of these two methods. So you will need this in your partial fraction. So that is the idea of that is the two methods that we use for the concept of identities.